Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm sure, like most of the other speakers, you always get this initial feeling of butterflies. You get this turbulent feeling that it will all go to pot. One of the things that I don't particularly like about preparing notes is you find that someone's probably already covered it better, or it's already in the introduction. So what I'm going to have to do is try and find where I need to start, because I believe it was the Professor Adam, he's covered a bit, you've covered a bit as well. So I'll find my way through. So I'll have to apologize if I forget anything as well. Yes, as has already been introduced, my name is Dalian Adofo. I work in visual communications. One aspect of that is filmmaking. Anything that's visual that can be communicated through visuals, I work within that field. I'm also a teacher by profession. I won't necessarily describe all my films or artwork that I do as acts of spiritual devotion. However, I can see a trend in how the content and the type of work that I've been creating since I made more of a link with my spiritual orientation and my own personal experience has changed a lot of things, not only just the attitude that I hold, but in the type of work that I'm willing to work as a part of. The one film, though, that was inspired solely by our spiritual practice, this is myself and my wife. This is us in Ghana, filming for the first film, Ancestral Voices. This is Boti Falls in Ghana, which is itself a body of water that is dedicated to an entity. And one of the interesting things we found when we were filming was this a baby snake that just appeared randomly out of nowhere, and it was just swimming through the water while we were filming. So why we felt it necessary to make this film was so we could give people, especially non-practitioners, a more objective and better understanding of African spiritual practices and systems. Because even in the 21st century, we talk about progression and development. We can't still even treat each other properly. But yep. This subject comes with a lot of negative associations and denigrations. You never find anything that's spoken about without some idea that it's negative and is linked into totally negative practices. There's no good whatsoever. I'll show you a trailer of the film.
If you disassociate yourself with your ancestral heritage, be you Japanese, Chinese, Indian, African, you are lost for your ancestral, your cultural heritage. Because if you're asleep to that, you are asleep spiritually. And if you're asleep spiritually, you can be oppressed and manipulated.
Juju, voodoo, evil, apparently. If you want to say Obia and Juju and Ifa and everything else African is evil, it is simply a tool that we have given. It is a God-given tool. It is a tool that exists in the universe. Use it for good, use it for bad. I was always taught that you use it for good.
The first Christian worshipped Jesus at the end of a whip. He didn't choose to worship that. How would you choose the religion of your oppressor? It makes no sense.
But I would argue and say that no, Christianity is actually, it predates your traditional beliefs because the spirit was there before everything happened.
The tradition, the culture, is to do with the universe and our place in it. Religion doesn't deal with that. Religion deals with one person. They have personalized God.
The other reason why African religions are so maligned and bedeviled is because if religion covers your total being. So if you follow your religion, it means that you're servicing your total self.
She didn't believe in doctors or anything. She was her own doctor. She was guided by nature. If you were ill, she knew what bush, what to do, what prayers, what To that's her way. But to everybody else, she's an Obia woman.
African belief systems have not been given the same mainstream attention or concentrated research. That is why we don't understand them, and which is why it's deemed negative. It's just lack of understanding.
Yeah, so that's the trailer for the first film, and as you're back now, let me give a round of applause for Sister Funeo for inviting me over to be able to speak. Yeah, really kind. I'm also happy to have met at least 2 people who told me they found out about this event through our page on Facebook. And often there's a lot of noise made about how some of these social networks are just a waste of time, but it's all in how it's used, I would say. The first time we were here, we were invited by an organization in New Jersey called African Echoes, who I met them. Okay, there you go. Again, through Facebook. So I guess it's all determined by how it's used, not as opposed to just random, unrestricted use. Right, going back to the film, I remember when we were actually going through the process of the film, the amount of alienation that started taking place. You had friends and family who were convinced that, we'd been possessed by these malevolent entities, this devil, this Lucifer, when none of that exists in my tradition. Exactly. So it was very challenging at that point, and easily we could have said, you know what, let's just leave it, let's do other things. We have skills. You can always recreate something. However, the type of changes that we were seeing in our lives, from us aligning even more so with the African spiritual worldview, this wasn't even a choice. We were not going to stop what we're doing because of somebody else's ignorance, because that's what informs this type of irrational behavior. You don't know about it, you're not making any effort to find out about it, but you can easily, label people from your own ignorant viewpoint. Very bizarre. So, the film itself, the journey was very enriching, and it has enriched our lives since then. Whether it's the immediacy of the signs that you would see after a ritual or a prayer, whether it's the symbols that you see during your day, whether it's from the animals or, it might be a big billboard, and then it'll trigger something off. And then you have to wonder, why did you see the billboard then? Why does it have this particular message that seems so relevant in your life? Nothing like a random coincidence, more interconnected understandings, So when we get these challenging periods, for us now, it's become a learning and development period. What did we do first that wasn't really the way it was supposed to be done? What other ways can we try? This is how the traditions have opened our minds, if you want to put it at that. And for me, myself as well, personally, it's brought a conscientious approach, in terms of what type of films I want to work on. Whereas before, it might be, okay, this film could be a big earner. It could go viral. It'll make me a celebrity overnight. It's now more, is this film necessary? How is it going to benefit someone else? And if it's not going to benefit someone, what's the point of me necessarily engaging in that endeavor? So these are some of the examples of how it's changed not only our outlook, but how we are as people as well. And like all the creative endeavors that I engage in, this being invited here gave me an opportunity to think, because like you were saying earlier, sometimes you end up in these mind spaces where you separate things and you don't see how interconnected they are. So having a chance to think, okay, so how am I going to talk about my spiritual practice with my professional practice, if you want to call it that? But then on having the opportunity to reflect on it, it's quite obvious that I didn't even notice it myself. Because for the creatives amongst us, we're all familiar with something called the design process. You go through a process of exploring ideas, then you might match and put a few together, and then you end up with the final product. But then when you think about it, that idea in itself, you could call it an invisible entity, because you don't see it yet. You see it somewhere in your mind, but you can't touch it. And you take it from that realm and you bring it into the physical realm. I'm sure we can all appreciate what I'm trying to say here. Yeah. So this is what it gave me, and I'll give you an example in the sense that very recently, because I'll talk about ancestral voices. Very recently, I've been engaged in another film project looking at natural hair on African women, and I was tasked with the logo. So I kept going through these iterations for over a month. I just kept trying new ideas. Nothing was working. So I just said, you know what? That's fine. Take it to ritual. Open yourself up and just see what comes. This was in February. It was, I believe it was on a Thursday, the day before Valentine's Day, actually. And by the Friday, I was heading to a capoeira class. And then I just got this question that just says, why don't you try looking at the molecular structure of hair? Yeah? Went home, one Google search. I thought, oh, I like this. It's the hair follicle. How will I incorporate it into the logo itself? This is what the client ended up choosing. Okay? Ancestral Voices idea was born in spring. Myself and my wife sitting by her window, and there was this tree in the park. And just the bird activity that just kept going on around this tree, sometimes from the tree back to a windowsill, informed the conversations we had. Next thing, we had an idea. We thought this is the idea we'll run with. But through going to Ghana to film, meeting different practitioners, see, the idea had its own life. We thought we knew what the final product would be, but it took us a longer journey. And this is, I guess, the accelerating aspect of opening up and surrendering to this force, because this force, you're always connected to it, you know? And as a result, by having too much of it, I'm in control, I'm going to do this, you don't need to call the health department. I can tell the difference between, I'm not going crazy with voices, yes? What is my own critical and analytical mode of thinking, and what is also something else that is coming in because I've invited it in. I'm well versed in my craft to know that. And I leave it open. And more often than not, this is where the answers come to guide me to the solutions that we're looking for. So let me try and see if I can find out where I was in this speech that I shouldn't have really bothered with. Ah, perfect. I think here. Okay. We're working towards a sequel to our film, where we want to give an overall structure to African spirituality. Because no matter where you go across the continent, whether you're working with the Zulus or you're going back in time, BC, to the people we call the Ancient Egyptians, to how it's manifested in Haiti right now, or Trinidad and Tobago, you will find at least 4 core themes, which have never changed. We're talking about continuity through time, and now through distance, of people who may have never met each other. But there's something core. To me, that's a system. Put your hand up if you're a practitioner and you can get paid time off for work holidays in the West. See, no one's put their hands up. Hindus get Diwali. The Buddhists can get off for the New Year. What's the other one? Jews, yes? What's happened to the African? And I'll give you an example. Christianity, I can do this with all the other religions. Maybe 2 main ideas. The 10 Commandments and Jesus Christ as an archetype. But even with Jesus, some say he's a prophet. Some say he's the Son of God. The SDAs will say you only worship Jesus on a Saturday. The Jehovah's Witness will say something else. But under the label of Christian, they get particular rights and privileges that gets afforded them. How about the African systems? Rather than me tell you the main themes that I'll give us score for our next movie, I'll play you a clip from our fundraising video. Culture is like lifeblood. It's what links generations of people together by passing on necessary information to ensure their continued survival.
Culture to me is ultimately a tool to learn about oneself. It was a desire to see the ways of the past which led us to self-fund and produce a documentary, Ancestral Voices, with the aim to open up much needed debate on African spiritual teachings and its influence across mainstream religions. Since the film's release, it's been acquired by educational institutions in the UK and in the US.
We will need your support to be able to complete the sequel to our first film. It will be broader and more substantial in its coverage of African philosophies and esoteric practices as we have progressed further with our studies and research into the topic. We intend to create a visual dissertation that will provide a common framework by identifying and linking together common and related esoteric practices and philosophies from different communities on the continent, as well as his legacy in the diaspora.
In our dedication to this project, we've invested our own funds once again to secure interviews with a High Sanusi Sangoma from South Africa and well-noted academic scholars on the topic. But there's so much more that needs to be done in terms of interviews and locations to film, and to make this happen, we need your support.
No contribution you can make will be too little or too big. Kindly visit our website to get an idea of the various ways in which you can support this project to become a reality.
So what will you contribute
to preserving African history and culture? The point I'm trying to make, I gave you a few examples that I know some people are against the term African spirituality, but in terms of, because they pick out the national identities, but or even the tribal identities, which we don't even know if were given by the British or anyone else. We don't even know if this is what we Africans would refer to ourselves. So it's going to be a big project, and from hearing what everyone has said, what I can say is, how can you help make it happen? It doesn't have to be financial at all. There are different ways. I'll give you a few examples here. Sharing our content, and thank you all those of you who told me you found out about it through Facebook. We have a Facebook page, we have a YouTube channel, Twitter, Tumblr content. Just share it. You sharing it, you help take our work further. I'm sure you'll find like minds, and we can go further with that. Also, we're limited in terms of budget. We self-funded the first one. Their baby's on the way. We can't do it again, So if you have any personal photos, video footage of ceremonies you've been to, and also information about rituals that generally doesn't come out in the mainstream. I'll say two of the main, or three actually: Voodoo, the Akan system, and the Ifa system. Very well known. But you might know something very obscure about a people who it's not generally covered. That could come in. That could help us. By you doing so, you put those people on the map as well. So that's another way you can help, and we will credit you. We're just not taking your video and you say, oh, we went there and we did it. Everybody gets the due credit. Also, if you know of any other ways in which you can benefit, we can't think of it all, maybe you can. Just email us, take a card from me afterwards, and get involved. Thank you for your time, and I hope it's been worth it.